Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's 10 at 10, which is carrying on from our hits and tips of beautiful tools within Xero. So, today we're going to be looking into the various reports. In particular, we're going to be focusing on P&L, balance sheet, and how to format these. Now, if you're new to Xero or you've been using it for a while, you may or may not know of the formatting options. So, we'll show you some of these items now. I'm just going to share my screen with you guys so you can see the beautiful demo company. And what you would normally do is to see a report, you go to accounting and you would select either profit and loss or balance sheet. Now, depending on what you've got set up as your favourites, you may see the new format or the old format. And I'll just show you what the difference is. So I'm going to go into reports, which will show me every single report available. And I'm just going to click on more reports because you can see here there's a balance sheet which says new, and this one is starred, so this one will be showing on my drop down list. Likewise, there's a profit and loss here which is also marked new with a blue star, which is the one also showing on my drop down list. But further down there's also the option for the old balance sheet format and the old profit and loss format. Now, each one has benefits in different ways. You may decide that you prefer one to the other, or you may actually use a combination of both when you go to do reports, because they both offer slightly different ways of reporting. So I'm going to start off by showing you the old format of profit and loss. So I've clicked into here and I will get a report. So let's make sure I get my order right. So I'll get a report which looks something like this. Now, this is the old format of profits and loss reports, whereby all of the blue text is items which we can drill down into, and we can customize the layout at the top. So we can change the period, we can change how many periods we're comparing, so we can look at it quarterly or even annually, and of course we can choose how many periods we're actually comparing against. Now, this is just the standard format which Xero has produced. I haven't customized this. This is just literally a list of all the account codes, and this will be sorted alphabetically, which may or may not be beneficial to your business. But what we're saying with profit and loss reporting is we can add a lot of value simply by shimmying some of these around and adding some order to our reports. Now, this will give us more clarity in what we're looking for. It will give us ideas of trends, and it makes actual business decisions much easier. So I'm just going to share with you a custom report on how to access these. So if you haven't set one up, if you go to layout options and you go to choose layout, it will give you the option to change your layout, or you can create a new one. So if I go into here, I have no layouts to actually choose from. But if I go into the option to create a new layout, when it loads, I'll be greeted with this screen. Now, this is the format layout, so I can customize this. I'm just going to make this a profit and loss new as my demo, and I'm going to make this a default profit and loss report for users. So basically, if I like the report and I find it beneficial, I can make it custom made so that everyone who logs in will see that as the default format. Now, I might have my sales ordered alphabetically in my P&L, but actually that's not particularly helpful for me. I might actually want, say, sales to be at the top of my list and consulting further down. Now, the best way to do this is to group selected accounts so that we can move them around more effectively. You can just move them, but you can only move them into subcategories where they'll get sorted alphabetically. So I'm going to group sales training, and just as an example, I'm going to just call the group 1 sales. Actually, I'm going to call it O1 sales because I might have a lot of income codes, and I'm just going to group it there. And likewise, I'm going to take consulting and just call this one O2, so it's in a different order, just to give you a bit of a feel for what we're going for. So if I click save, I now have a slightly different layout to my P&L reports. So as you can see, anything that's ungrouped will be separate. Anything that's grouped will be in these subcategories. And you can see, because I've labeled them with O1, O2, I've changed the ordering of these. So this can be a really good method of reordering your P&L so you get the big focal points at the very, very start of your profits and loss report. It might be that actually I'm going to do a big push on training. I really want a big focus on this. And I might actually end up with many subcategories within this sales training group. I might end up with sales training for consultants, sales training for staff, sales training for, and so on. So this actual group may get bigger because you can group more than one item in one group. Now, my actual profit and loss report, when it comes down to the cost, isn't very value adding. I can't actually really see what's going on particularly well. I can sort of analyze against trends, but not particularly well. And one thing that is distorting my P&L a little bit is actually the fact that corporation tax and depreciation expenses is being recorded in my operating expenses. So basically, I can see my net profit, but I can't see what my profit is before tax, and I can't see what my profit is after tax. So I'm just going to change this layout a little bit more as well. Now, I would say to do this with anything with dividends, depreciation, or corporation tax. I would be encouraging people to put it into non-operating expenses so that it drops below the line. I'm just going to show you what that looks like. I'm just going to drop these down to here. And I might actually decide to group these within the non-operating expenses, but for now I'm just going to show you how this would look. And as we can see now, corporation tax is separate from our operating profit, as are our dividends. Actually, there's not any dividends at this point in time, so it's not really going to make a great example. But the whole point of corporation tax is you should have profit before tax, corporation tax, and then your dividends are drawn after any tax. So what you're looking for is operating profit, which is positive, and net profit. Hopefully it's positive as well, but if it's not and it's close to the line, you just want to make sure that there's enough net profit there to cover your dividends after you've accounted for your tax. Now, to add more depth to my report, I would also encourage people to group their cost codes into more value-adding points. So just as a little bit of an example, I am going to group some of my various premises costs, and I'm simply going to call this premises costs. Likewise with income, if you want them displayed in a certain order, I would encourage you to choose 01, 02, and so on, just so that they sort in the order you want them to sort in rather than alphabetically. So really handy tip that, because actually otherwise it would just sort chronologically, which might not be the most value adding to you. Now, I'm just going to be a bit lazy. I'm just going to group a few of these into office costs, because why not? But really, what I'd probably do, there we go, office costs. Just an example. I'll just give you a few income and a few expense examples so you can see how this looks. And I might even book, say, entertainment, travel together, just to give you a feel. Travel and these will go into operating expenses. So now, when I actually look at my profit and loss report, I can see trends not only in the individual account code, so I know that I've got stuff in my general expenses, which I should probably assign, but also I can see trends in the actual overall grouping code. So I know that my premises costs are relatively consistent apart from in July. And this is because I've got a big repairs and maintenance bill. So the whole point is I can see the trend really clearly. And rather than having to look at our premises costs individually and go, what does cleaning look like? What does light and power look like? What does rent look like? What do rates look like? I can just go, what does the overall cost code look like? It looks about right. So it does draw your attention to the overall subtotal rather than the individual account lines. And then if you find there's something in there which looks abnormal, aka there's a big jump, you can then drill into the account category into more detail. So this is the old formatting of P&L. I really like it because you can drill down into everything, so I can physically open it and click into each of these. What I would do if doing that is I'd right click and open a new tab so you can keep this report open. I find it really user friendly, really like this one. But there are benefits to the new report. So imagine I've gone back to reports and I've gone into my new profit and loss report. So this will look a little bit different. This is how it looks here. Now I can still drill down, but only into the blue text. So I can't drill down into the text like I can in here, but I can still drill down into the numbers. But you'll see that the layout is a little bit different. Now, to change the layout, you can do this at the top. So let's just have a look and change it to last month, in fact, because September's not quite complete. Now you'll see here, it's only given me 1 month at the moment, but we can customize this report. And most importantly, we can save this. Now the saving option works slightly different. In the old format, when we save a report, it will appear down in our layouts and we can edit, we can choose, we can create new one, etc. With this one, we have to actually save the report as either a draft, a published, or a custom report, which we can find back in our report options. And likewise, we can set it as the default view when we physically load up this report. Now, what we'll see here is there's an option for report settings. So I can choose to add comparative periods, which I'm going to do because it's really beneficial to be able to see a bit more of a full picture. So now we can see we're building up our report, and it's building up quite quickly. I can also assign filters, so if I want to report by any of my tracking codes, I can do that here. And likewise, I can change between cash and accrual basis, depending on what report you're looking for. To actually customize the layout of this report, I'd have to go to the bottom left and click on Edit Layout. Now, the reporting functionality of this one is that there's a little bit more depth. There's some stuff you can do in this one that you can't do in the other, but the actual reformatting works slightly differently as well. So within this one, it may look a little bit more bespoke because it can be. So I can actually add extra rows in. So I can add a group, which works in the same way as the old P&L, whereby I can group account codes together, but I can also add a formula. So it might be actually, I want to see, let's see, it's probably not going to be a great example because I don't think I have many cost of sales in this account as an example. But what I might actually do is just under gross profit, I might decide that actually I want to see gross profit as a percentage as well. So I might actually do gross profit divided by turnover, because it's what percentage of my turnover is gross profit. And I might have a look at what this looks like. I'm just going to times it by 100 so I can see it. I'm actually going to put percentage rather than an and sign because that's a bit more beneficial, isn't it? Now, this might be a terrible example because I might not have a cost of sale in this account. But oh, thank the Lord I do. So I've got gross profit percentage, so I can add things like this. I can add formulas in, I can add lines in, so I can actually track percentages, etc. And likewise, in the other report, I would recommend formatting this so that we get a bit more detail in our various codes. Now, one thing in here is if you add a group, you can reposition these manually. So you don't need to do the whole 01, 02, 03 thing, because actually we can literally just group them. And if you hold down control, you can drag multiple items in at once. But the one thing I will say is if you shimmy around the order so it's not alphabetical, it won't correct it to an alphabetical ordering. You would have to do that manually. So it's whether or not that bothers you really. But really, really handy report. And actually, one of the benefits of this is if I add columns, I can also add budgets, I can add formulas, I can add percentages, etc. And one of the benefits of this is if you want to do forward forecasting, this one is beautiful because you can simply go into the month and you can change the period you're looking at. I might have, say, I might prefer to look at it forward. So I might actually go June, July, August. And actually, I'd quite like to see the budget for September. So it's really nice to add. And then all you need to do is add a formula column at the end, which adds all of these together and you have a complete forecast for the year. Then when a period passes, you simply change the actuals to a budget and you get a lovely budget to actuals and you get a lovely forward-thinking forecast, which is absolutely beautiful. Highly recommend. So we've looked at the profit and loss reports and how to format some of these, and which view you use may depend on what your requirements are, which one you prefer. You might just prefer one view to the other, or you might want some of the functionality in the new profit and loss format, which isn't available in the old one. Personally, I find this one easier to review trends, just because it's easier to quickly tick in and out of various account codes, etc. And I find this one is for custom reports whereby I want a little bit more depth on a certain report, or if, as mentioned before, if I want to build a forecast together here. Now I'm going to move on to the balance sheet, because actually the balance sheet is one of these reports which is often forgotten about. Oh, actually, while I'm here, just a little pointer. If you prefer one report to the other, you can actually favourite these so they appear on your accounting list. Obviously, if you tick both, it's a bit confusing. So tick the one you prefer. If you prefer the old format, you want this one. If you prefer the new format, you obviously want this one. Same concept works with the balance sheet, but you can find either or from this section. Now I'm just going to go into the old balance sheet, which I think is this one. Yes, it is. So this is the old balance sheet. It looks much the same as the P&L, except the default is to literally look at current period and previous year. But actually, when it comes to balance sheet reviews, it can be really helpful to look at previous month and say an extra 4 periods or so, just to give an idea of trend, because you can see big fluctuations between accounts. So it's quite helpful. So you can see I've bought a new office item in September, whereas if I was looking at the year to date, I wouldn't necessarily know that from the face of it. Now the balance sheet is often just left pretty unformatted. It's not that helpful when you do, well actually no, tell a lie, it's helpful, but it could be more beneficial. So what I would actually do is, with your balance sheet, I would also group items, especially liabilities, as a priority, because these are the ones where basically managers will need more information on them, and these are really value adding to have grouped. At the moment, I've got directors' loan accounts, I've got NICs, PAYE, etc. So I'm going to create a new layout, and I'm just going to show you some of the examples of what we would normally do in our clients. So we would normally, we'd group taxes, we'd group we'd group taxes, we'd group directors' loan accounts, and if there's anything like hire purchases, we would also group those together as well. Really helpful, because what it gives you an idea for is when you're growing in a certain area, when your liability is building up, whether you're paying off arrears, whether you're up to date, it's really helpful. Now PAYE and NICs. I tell you what, it's quite a challenge typing and talking at the same time. I've got to give credit due to people who do it a lot. So, helps if I name the report. Balance sheet new. And I might decide to make this a default for all of the balance sheet users as well. And I'm just going to click save. So what I have here is, in much the same way as how I formatted my P&L, I've added some groups. I've moved some of the account codes into the various groups simply by selecting the tick boxes. And what I now have is more clarity on how my corporation tax is changing. So depending on how you format your accounts, we quite like to do it so you can see corporation tax building monthly, but you can see when it's due, and we isolate 2 different balance sheet codes, or 3 or 4, however many you need. So you can see exactly which year is due, what the liability is, how it's building up. And otherwise, if you've just got a single account code, you might look at it and be like, okay, I owe £20,000. Oh no, wait, no, I only owe £12,000, because I only need to pay £12,000 this year, and that £8,000 relates to next year, and it gets confusing. So we separate them out. Likewise with directors' loan accounts, we separate these out as well, because you can identify exactly how much each director is drawn, how much each one is owed, but group them together so you can see the overall picture. Now, in this particular example, the directors are actually owed money, which is good, but the reality is, if we had an overdrawn situation, say one director's drawn £2,000, the other director's drawn £5,000, then we have a £7,000 worth of overdrawn director's loan account, which would need to be cleared by a dividend. And having these grouped means that actually, whatever value is in here, can the equity cover it? And it's a really handy summary if you have many directors, because you know exactly what the full picture is of how much dividend you do need to clear down everyone's director's loan account. And likewise with PAYE and national insurance, it's really helpful as well. You can see when you're up to date, you can see when you're behind, you can see if there's any discrepancies in the account. So you've made a payment of, I might have made a payment in the most recent month, but I might have paid £400. I can see a discrepancy straight away. But more importantly, I can see whether I've overpaid PAYE or national insurance and just check that my payroll records are up to date. So really handy little tip in the balance sheet. I might also group my computer equipment together so they're on a single line. Likewise with office equipment, so that I don't have computer equipment depreciation, office equipment depreciation, because based on chronological order, sometimes these can get muddled around and be a bit confusing. So often it's good to group these two together. Now I'm just going to show you the new report for the balance sheet, and this one likewise works in much the same way as the new report for the P&L. So we can customize this using the top functionality. We might look at end of last month. We might do report settings and compare it with the previous periods. Give us a little bit of a trend. And as mentioned before, we'd have to edit layouts within this section, but it's really helpful actually because there's a lot of account codes in here, you may notice, but one of the advantages of this report for balance sheet reporting is whether you want to use KPIs. Now, Xero does have functionality inbuilt, so you can review items such as current ratio, etc. But if you did want to, you could build ratios, etc. into this report. You could add formulas and you could customize this in a way that suits you. So very, very helpful. One thing to say with all of these is if you're changing one of these reports, just remember to edit the layout, save it at the bottom right, and likewise, if you're editing one of these ones, remember you save it at the bottom right. You can either save it as draft to continue editing it, you can save it as published, or you can save it as custom. Now, the difference between published and custom is that published sort of sets it in stone a little bit. So if you want to make changes, you have to copy it, whereas custom is a live report. So if you view it, and you have, say, end of last month set, it will follow as you move through the months. So that's the difference between those two. Usually I save them as custom just because I like live reporting and I think everyone should benefit from live reporting. It's just a no-brainer. So I've given you a bit of an idea, a bit of an insight for how we can format P&L and balance sheet and why we should do this. Now, the thing I will say quickly as a summary is sourcing sales is really value adding because you want to be able to track your key earners. You want to know which sales you're making and why, and most importantly, you want to see any drop-offs, any increases. You want to capture those. Likewise, you want to see the same for your expenses. And if you have them grouped into categories, it's easier to see trends such as an increase, a drop-off, an annual bill which actually needs prepaying. Really helpful, and it saves you actually, from a business owner perspective, it saves you a little bit of time because you can literally scan very quickly and go, right, that's an error I need to look at because this office costs. It just looks like completely different to the rest. So it's really, really time saving actually, and it just makes your insights much easier to capture. And likewise with the balance sheet, same again, group your liabilities and gives you a bit more visibility on these so you can keep an eye on these. So very helpful. Love Xero's reporting. Please do make use of it. Please do customize your reports and take advantage of this. And one advantage I can also say is you don't just have to choose one custom layout. You can make lots and lots and lots. So I might have, oh, now it loads up. I made one earlier, it didn't load, so I had to do it from scratch. But anyway, you can load up any report, any number of reports. So you might have one which is expanded out into more detail, like this one. Then again, you might go in and make a custom one where actually you've changed the layout a little bit. I'm just going to give you a demo. You might have another report where actually you've gone, I'm just going to show summaries of these accounts because I've got someone coming in from outside. They're an external investor. They want to know the information. They want to know what my premises costs are, but I don't really want them to know exactly what my rent is, what my light and power is, what my rates are. So actually I could group these together in summary account codes. But when I drill into the account, I can see more detail. So it's made up of more than one account. And it's a fantastic way of saying, right, for managers, I'll give you the full detail. For external parties, I might restrict your view just a little bit so you get the information you need, but don't give away too much. Right, I hope you've all found this useful. Please do make use of these reports and see which one you prefer. It might just have a different feel. You might prefer one layout to the other. And thank you very much for joining us today. If you did find this video useful and you enjoyed this, please do leave a note in the comments. And likewise, if you have any queries, also please feel free to leave a note in the comments. And we hope to catch you again later on this week, where we'll be covering more of Xero's tips and more of the functionalities within Xero, which we can really benefit from. See you soon. Bye.